Off to the right, beyond a smattering of uneven evergreens, Charlie could see the shoreline of Table Rock Lake shimmering with the fresh morning light spilled across it. Sometimes in the early morning, before the sun rose, and when there wasn't any fog rolling off the water, she could see beyond the lake to the lights of River Rock, Missouri. The sound of gentle lake waves crashing onto the rocky shore filled her ears. The constant hum was one of her favorite compliments to the Ozark mountain landscape, and so different from the violent and tumultuous waves she'd seen on the East Coast during a college spring break she'd rather forget. Those waves were invasive. They were in harmony with the world around them, and harmony was something Charlie held dear. Harmony wasn't what she felt when her mind drifted back to the urn perched on her fireplace mantel. Why her father hadn't given the task to one of her brothers, she couldn't fathom. Maybe it was some sick final joke. She thought about this as she hopped out of the Jeep and moved to the oak stump where she liked to sit. 2 giant oaks had once anchored the spot, but one fell to disease and now offered her a seat, while the other massive oak offered shelter from the rising sun. Had it been a joke? No, her father had never joked when he was alive. It wasn't likely he'd begin now. And it's not that she hadn't loved her father. She had. Of course she had. She just didn't like him very much, and the feeling was mutual. They were 2 people at opposite ends of the spectrum, separated by everything that made each who they were. They coexisted in a household after her mother died. They were cordial, polite, like strangers. Now he'd been gone a year. Shouldn't her world have changed? And different, somehow? Yes, she was a grown woman, but shouldn't there be a longing for him? Instead, there was a longing for all she'd never had with him. When the first beads of sweat broke out on her forehead, Charlie left her perch on the tree stump and started toward the Jeep. The sun was a burning ball above her, promising yet another scorcher of a day. It had been unseasonably muggy, and that made the artists cranky. Charlie ticked off the list of chores in her head, turning her thoughts far from her father and to the world she loved, the artists' retreat she'd named after her mom. Her mother and she had planned it before her mother's illness took her life. At 12, Charlie'd made a promise she'd see it through. And Charlee McKinley had believed her. She'd touched her cheek and said, "You'll do it, Charlie. I know you will." And then her glassy eyes closed. Charlie knew that wasn't the last time she'd seen her mother alive, but it was the last real memory. And she kept it locked in a beautiful box inside her heart. The artist's retreat was a gift of hope to a little girl who would grow up without her mother to help her learn to wear makeup, to help her understand why boys acted so strange when they liked you, to snap pictures of a prom dress. This was her mother's way of giving her something to cling to, something they'd share, forever, even when death separated them. Charlie cranked the motor on the Jeep and thought about her day, mentally listing things by order of importance. Mr. Gruber needed a bath. The other artists were complaining. He was one of the more eccentric artists who stayed on the property, often working days without sleep, and sometimes forgetting trivial things like hygiene. The hot water in his cottage was shoddy at best, and this gave him the perfect excuse not to bathe. She really needed to hire a handyman. Number 17 on her to-do list. The Jeep slogged through the creek bed and out to the open field where she could put her foot on the gas. The smooth terrain was mostly free of rocks on this part of the property, making it tons of fun to go fast during the rainy season. She could hit the brakes and spin the wheel, making perfect donuts in the mud, which she'd discovered was a great way to de-stress. As she rounded the curve and the compound came into view, Charlie smiled. She saw this same scene day after day, but mornings like this, after thinking about her mom and how pleased she'd be, Charlie couldn't help but feel a bit of pride herself. The cottages were arranged in a semicircle around an open yard with a giant wooden platform in the